Podcasting from Hartford, you're listening to the Connecticut Scoreboard Podcast.
Jon, thanks so much for joining us today to preview the upcoming UConn-Creighton game. I know this is one UConn fans have been really excited for, so thanks for hopping on today.
Yeah, no problem at all. I'm excited too. I'm glad that we're here, and hopefully we stay. We get that game in.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Knocking all the wood in the house. Jon, to start, Creighton came into this season with pretty high expectations. What have been your thoughts on the way their team has performed early on? And as we really start to get into conference play here, do you see those expectations staying as they were in the preseason?
Well, they're going to keep those expectations high. The players are, the coaches are. I think that based on what they accomplished last year, they want to share the Big East title and finished, I think it was 7th in the final AP poll. They were in line for a 2 seed, maybe a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament. And they returned basically their whole team, aside from Tyshawn Alexander, who turned pro. So they feel like they can replicate that success. I mean, they have all the pieces in place, right? And they added a few, contributors who are making an impact off the bench. But, it has been a struggle at times. I mean, if you want to judge Creighton's performances through the lens of which they judge it, because, their standards are really high. Yeah. For a lot of teams, maybe 5-2, you're feeling okay. But Creighton expected to perhaps even be better than that. And, yeah, I think just finding its timing offensively has been one thing and finding the rhythm there. And then defensively, the effort hasn't always been at the level that the Jays are accustomed to. And maybe that's just rust or, maybe underestimating some of its opponents. I don't know. But at least at St. John's, I think that the Jays were encouraged that some of the changes, some of the things that they've been working on in practice, they were able to take it to the floor and see some positive results. So they handled the Johnnies in New York, and they hope, we'll see. Obviously, UConn's a much different test, but we'll see if they can bring some of those same improvements to Storrs.
I think when we looked at the schedule and you saw that they were playing Kansas early on, I think people thought that could be a toss-up game. I think the loss to Marquette might have been surprising to some fans who might not be as familiar with kind of the inner workings of Creighton. From your perspective and being so close to this program, was that a surprising loss to you when they did lose that game last week?
It was. Largely because Marquette kind of went all in with the idea of we have size and athleticism and length, and we know that that's going to cause issues for us defensively because Creighton's a small ball team, moves the ball really well, shoots threes, likes to push tempo. Mm-hmm. They're quick, and they get on you and they can wear you down that way. So, Marquette, though, it has some bigger dudes, some bigger wings, and wants to kind of grind it out offensively a little bit. And Marquette was like, we're not going to change who we are to match that. And it's interesting because last year teams who did that did not have a lot of success. Creighton, what's the old at? 3's better than 2, so kind of Creighton lived that last year. And teams that were, stayed with their traditional lineups a lot of times got exploited by Creighton's ability to, move the defense with cuts and screens and ball movement and player movement. More times than not, the Jays won those matchups, which kind of goes honestly, watching this team play last year, I was baffled many times because I'm like, you see the opponent and they've got all the measurables and yet Creighton, the way it played, it found a way to get it done. So I kind of thought, okay, same formula against Marquette, and it didn't work out that way. And that was largely because, according to the players, Creighton's players, they just didn't have the same tenacity that they brought last year. So they're not as athletic, they're not as tall, they're not as strong as their opponents, but they tried to make up for that with some grit. They'd win the hustle, they make the hustle plays, get to the loose balls, take charges, fight on the defensive end, rebounding, just find ways to even it out as best as they could. And they just didn't have that same level of whatever it is, intensity, whatever you want to use to describe it. They didn't have it against Marquette. So they showed signs against St. John's with that, but certainly they're going to need it against UConn because everything I just laid out about Marquette, the way that they're built, like UConn is that team,
Right.
and it's going to want to slow the tempo down and really make Creighton work defensively, and then just pound it at them as much as possible. So we'll see how much improvement the Jays have made when they meet UConn. But that's why the Marquette game was a little bit surprising to me, just because I'd seen that play out all last year, where Creighton, you look at the two teams, you're like, there's no way Creighton can hang with these guys.
Yeah.
Like, these guys are monsters, and yet, maybe Creighton gets beat on the boards. It got beat on the boards a lot last year. Maybe it gets beat on points in the paint, which happened, but they made enough threes and controlled the pace of the game to a level to where they could, get the win. So it didn't happen against Marquette, and we'll see if it can happen against UConn.
I know UConn fans might not be as familiar with this Creighton team as some of the other Big East teams, especially, that Creighton was in the Big East the first go around for UConn. In terms of some of the players on this year's team, I think Marcus Zegarowski is the easy guy to start with here. What can fans expect to see out of him? Again, he was the Big East preseason player of the year this year. And how's he been performing so far this year?
Yeah, he's kind of had to shake off the rust a little bit. He had an injury at the end of last season and then had off-season knee surgery, so he missed some time and is kind of like, with the way the pandemic's impacted college basketball, like they didn't have as many practice opportunities. Yeah, he didn't get to go 5-on-5 very much, and so it's taken him he's needed game reps, and he probably still needs game reps, honestly, to where he's truly back to the same level, playing at the same level. But no, he's really good. I mean, he's a point guard who fits really well with Creighton's system. They like to push tempo, space the floor, shoot the three, and run ball screens. He's got a really good knack for moving the defense and reading the defense out of the ball screen situation. So he's kind of the engine for the Jays, gets things started for them, and knows how to set guys up really well. And then he'll look for his own shot and his own offense. And he's got the ability to. He's shorter, maybe 6'6", 6'1", but he can finish inside over bigger guys. He knows how to kind of contort his body a little bit and find the right angles. He's got a really good change of speed. I mean, all of a sudden he hits you with a crossover and he's by you, and you're like, "What? Where did that come from?" So and he can score at multiple levels. He's got mid-range game and the 3-point shot. So yeah, he's Big East preseason player of the year for a reason. He's really good, and while I do think he is starting to. I mean, I think he's still going to need some time to kind of get his legs under him and everything. But, he was 6 of 7 from 3 at St. John, so maybe he's breaking out of it.
In terms of the rest of the team, who's another guy or two that fans should be on the lookout for, that'll make a big impact for this Creighton team?
Oh, man, it depends on the day. That's the one thing about this Creighton team is they're really balanced offensively, and they have a lot of guys that kind of have bought into their role, and they're still sorting some things out a little bit because, again, it's a new team, new season. But, there's a number of guys that kind of depending on the matchup or the way that the game flows, all of a sudden you might see someone bust out for 15, 17, 20 points. Denzel Mahoney seems like a guy who's emerging as one of their go-to options offensively. He's shooting 40% from three so far this year. He's kind of like a 6'4", 6'5" wing with a pretty muscular build, 6'11" wingspan. He's not going to play above the he's not like crazy explosive off the bounce, or he's not going to play above the rim, but he's just really steady and savvy with his ability to produce and score. So, and defensively, he's made an impact too. He's active and he reads things well, and he gets his hands on balls and deflects things. So it's very possible he might have the assignment of locking down or trying to lock down James Bouknight. We'll see.
All right.
Creighton may have to just mix defenders against him. I don't know what they plan to do, but he's been one of their better on-ball defenders so far this year. And then the other guy that comes to mind, Damian Jefferson almost had a triple-double. He's another versatile wing. Against St. John's, he was 10, 10, and 8, name to watch. But Christian Bishop is another guy who he's sort of I feel like he's kind of the key that unlocks their offense because he's a undersized 5-man, but he's so skilled that he can handle the ball at the top of the key and he almost serves as another point guard for him at times with his ability to read the floor and make the right passes. He's really good at setting screens and rescreening and getting shooters open. And then defensively, he's pretty versatile too and can help disrupt other teams' offenses by his ability just to hedge out on ball screens and make it tough there. So they got a number of guys, man. Mitch Ballack, I didn't mention him, and he's a knockdown shooter who, I don't know how many threes he had against Marquette, 6 or 7. It's ridiculous, his range, and when he gets on and starts making them, you got to watch out. So he'll be a guy that UConn has a glue to.
One guy I wanted to bring up and see what type of role he might be playing in, that's Alex O'Connell, the Duke transfer. I know he was just recently given his eligibility. What type of role are you expecting out of him? And is he someone that, you can expect some big minutes out of it in this matchup against UConn?
Well, they really like him. They like his skill set, and they think he's going to help them. I don't know given this is game 2, if you're going to see a significant impact. We'll see. I mean, he played it. He had 3 buckets against St. John, so he'll get an opportunity to play. And if he hits a few, maybe they stick with him for a while. But he was on the scout team for much of the season. They put a waiver in for his, to get his eligibility for this season, but they figured it was going to be a while, and so they were working him on the scout team, helping the starters get ready. And so he's got sort of I don't know, some things to adjust to just in terms of learning the system and knowing where to be. And he looked a little nervous, honestly, against St. John's, like first time playing with his team where everyone is already in a groove, like the whole roster, these guys have already been playing, and all of a sudden you sit out there and you're like, this is my first time. So I think he's going to need a few games to kind of get his feet wet, but he'll be a good addition. He's got experience too. He played in like 100 games at Duke. That's one thing that Creighton has lacked on its bench. It has some talent, a couple sophomores, a freshman big man, a junior big man who has been injured for most of his career at Creighton, but they don't have a lot of experience, and Alex O'Connell brings that. So he was one of the first guys off the bench at St. John's. Obviously, the coaching staff trusts him, but it may take some time for him to kind of just get settled in.
I know we talked about a few different things here, and I think we could wrap up on this one. If UConn, wants to have a chance to win this game, what's the biggest weakness that they could exploit from this Creighton team? Where's their advantage going to come from that could be the difference here?
Well, I mean, I think the easy answer is rebounding. Like, crash the glass. Is UConn? I think the number I saw was basically grabbing an offensive board on half of its misses.
Yeah,
so far.
They've got a really stacked front court this year. It's one of the few times they used to have a lot of success with it. Finally, starting to build up that depth there too. So really, have been doing a good job on the boards. I think they out rebounded USC, who's got some big dudes by quite a bit there too. So yeah, that's a good point there.
And the thing about it is like a lot of teams against Creighton won't want to crash the glass hard on the offensive side because they are worried about Creighton beating them down the floor and getting easy buckets in transition. But with UConn, they can send 1 or 2 guys and just beat those. They just win those matchups because they're so long and tall and relentless going after Creighton's going to have to go 5-on-2 and have 5 guys committed to boxing those guys out because they're just good at getting it. So that's one area. When Coach Hurley was at Rhode Island and met Creighton in the NCAA tournament 3 years ago, his team disrupted Creighton's tempo, its rhythm. It got Creighton's guards uncomfortable by just being tenacious on the ball. And, whether it's just kind of crowding them or maybe tugging the jerseys a little bit and putting your hands on them. Maybe you get called for a foul. I know UConn's been whistled for – I watched the USC game. They got called for a lot of fouls in that game.
Yep.
But it's okay because you establish sort of your identity of what you want to be defensively, and that can cause some issues for Creighton. There's no question about that. I mean, length is one thing, but it's also just sort of like the ability to move the Jays off their spots and to kind of keep them from finding that rhythm and locking in offensively. Because when they get rolling, I mean, if you watch some of the St. John's game, like
when they're good,
the ball. When the ball's being put on target and those guys sort of step into their jump shots, like that's when Creighton. It's when Creighton feels good. But UConn certainly has the ability to disrupt that. So we'll see if they can do it. I think those are the 2 sort of main areas that I think about from Creighton's side, where you're like, how do we combat this?
Awesome, John. Really appreciate the time and really looking forward to this game. Again, everyone knock on wood that Sunday at noon we've got this game on. So, John, appreciate the time and thanks for joining me.
Yep, no problem.